What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Real Comics Podcast. I'm your host, Felipe, aka Voodoo57, and along with me, as always, is my good friend, Andrew, aka Speedy G33. Andrew, how you doing today, man?
Saludos a todos.
That's right. Saludos a todos.
Hispanic,
we welcome you.
Heritage Month.
It is Hispanic Heritage Month. Viva la raza! And that kind of leads into our tone for the day. We want to tackle a little topic that's we've been bantering about for about a month or so, and it's kind of been on my mind, honestly, for the past 5 years, and haven't thought about it too much. And I think Andrew and I have different feelings on this, and this would be a great show for everyone to kind of learn a little bit from and get kind of our perspective of how we see something, a holiday being placed into film, like Dia de los Muertos will be in the upcoming Coco. Coco is what really got us talking about this, and I think there's two sides of this coin that really need to be talked about. What do you think there, Andrew?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's definitely a trending topic, considering it's still a ways out for this movie to come out. But it's definitely, I know on my Twitter, sparked some emotional responses. So
definitely on my end as well. I have very strong feelings about this, and I'm happy to share them with you. So today I think we're going to be getting a little bit personal. So please come along with us for this ride, learn and enjoy, take a piece of heritage and culture for Mexican Heritage Month with you, if nothing else. Please let us know what you think for sure at the end of this podcast, and definitely give us your feelings on this. Andrew, and I want to start off by saying we're using our real names now. We wanted to get into this with our podcasts anyway and kind of let our monikers go to the side a little bit. But for this, it's very personal. You and I are both Mexican Americans, but we both come from different sides of that. Andrew, give me your heritage, or where you've come from, and how you've kind of grown up.
Yeah, different background. I'm from New Mexico, Albuquerque, exactly. That's where my mother's from. My dad's from Texas, but pretty much my mother had the most influence on our upbringing. Dad was working. I've also lived all over the Southwest due to Dad doing a government type job. So I've lived in California, I've lived in Colorado, I lived in Arizona, and I've lived as far down in Mexico as Jalisco. So I've been all over the gamut of Mexican, but my traditions are New Mexican, which is a little different than other places in the Southwest.
Oh, definitely. Interesting. Okay, very cool. I am a Mexican American, son of I'm son of an immigrant who came here illegally, but through his mother, my grandmother became a U.S. citizen and joined in the military immediately, 25 years. So I'm technically an Air Force brat. I was born in Rapid City, South Dakota, but my heritage in growing up in East LA is where I get a lot of my culture and my influences. Again, this is a really strong subject for me. They're really ingrained. Obviously, my religion is Catholic. Andrew, I'm assuming yours is as well. Same.
It's Catholic, though I'm not much of a practicer anymore. But yes,
right. I would say the same thing. Only on specific holidays. Hopefully my grandmother doesn't, roll over her grave and beat me with a stick. But with this movie Coco coming out, it touches on a couple things with me. And let's get into a bit of pure fact here. Some of the facts in what Dia de los Muertos means to you and I are very different.
Yeah.
And they're going to be different depending on where you grew up in this country or throughout the Southwest. So, Speedy G, do you want to get into a little bit of the history of what you know of Dia de los Muertos for us?
Sure. The bit I know about Dia de los Muertos, I didn't grow up with it as much as you did, but I do know the history. My father is a historian, so I chatted with him a lot before this show. And basically, the holiday sprang up from the indigenous people that were in southern Mexico. And a common practice with the Spanish when they came to Mexico, predominantly the Catholic Church portion of the Spanish, was to indoctrinate the religion by incorporating some of the traditions that the people already had. So this celebration of your relatives that had passed away was incorporated and then moved, because they did it at a different time, to November, which coincides with the European All Saints Day. And that's why we have it now in November.
Exactly. So that being the case here, now that these movies are coming out, I've noticed, let's get into a little bit of how we kind of touch on these things. We've already had what I consider to be a beautiful CGI movie came out back in 2014. As a matter of fact, in October, by Jorge R. Gutierrez, called The Book of Life, which told the story of Manolo, a young man who wanted to follow his heart while it was through music. Okay? Flip to 2017, and we have this movie coming out by Disney, Coco, who is also about a young man inspired by music, trying to follow his heart. There are some similarities here that have made a lot of people upset, and including myself, but I've also got some facts to back up where I have a little bit of what bothers me about how they've kind of taken and appropriated this side of my culture. What do you think about these two having this mirror within themselves?
Well, the mirror doesn't surprise me in the sense that you would want to use music in both. Disney in particular likes to use music in their movies. So of course they're going to go the musical route. So now they can have some songs. They have to have the Let It Go hit, you know what I mean? That goes along with their movies. So that doesn't surprise me, but it does seem like, okay, this movie has already been done and it's been done well. And it's been told by Latinos, and we are going to take this movie and we're going to tell it ourselves, not necessarily by Latinos, the Disney way.
Right.
So.
Yeah. See, for me, this is a cherry on top of the cake that has been building at least for over the past 5. You walk into any Target store, you walk into any Walmart, you walk into any other store, and Dia de los Muertos has slowly been pushed onto that shelf along with all the other Halloween stuff, the costumes, the spiders, the cats, the cobwebs. And now something that I thought was a celebration of a holy day for me in my upbringing, growing up in East LA, has taken on a very commercial process. I'm not the only one who kind of feels agitated and angered by this in some sort of way. I feel like this appropriation has gone way too far. And the reason I feel that way, I have to bring this up. Disney not only made this film, but back in 2013, they officially filed papers with the patent office and trademark companies to trademark the phrase Dia de los Muertos. Now, they only pulled those papers because of an outcry, of course, from the Mexican-American community about being upset of them trying to appropriate even that title, that phrase, just so they could market it and slap it on a toy. And that only kind of infuriated me a little bit more. And I actually have to thank you because I honestly didn't know that originally. Yeah. This type of appropriation by a company, what do you think about that, Andrew?
That's bad. And for people to kind of put it in context, what if Disney had decided to appropriate Easter, Christmas, Ramadan? I mean, you go on, these religions, and they just decided that we're going to trademark your religious holiday, your very important celebration. We are going to trademark it and own it and do whatever we want with it. You know, that's just insanity that they almost got away with that they tried to slip that under the rug that no one would notice. And, you know, I had no idea until the outrage happened. They probably almost got away with it.
Exactly. I think if people weren't on top of it, they might have. And let me tell you another little known fact that I did during my research here. This isn't the first time Disney's tried to pull this. Now, that didn't surprise me. What surprised me was what they tried to pull it with. They tried to put the patent on the phrase SEAL Team 6 prior to the movies back in 2011. So this gives you an idea, unfortunately, of all the, you know, we all love Disney. I get it. There are things we love about Disney. But I think in these recent years, along with our culture, Disney itself as a company has crossed a line. They've gone too far. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what it's going to take for people to kind of see that. They're still going to push this stuff out. And Coco is a good example of it. We already had a beautiful representation of our culture in the Book of Life, and I think they've kind of done this here. Andrew, talk to me a little bit about these two movies. Now, first thing I want to say is we haven't seen Coco. None of us have. Yeah. So we don't want to assume that it is a poor movie, a bad movie. I'm sure it will get the Pixar Disney treatment and be a sweet, beautiful film, as most are. It'll be something that people can see with their families. But what do you think about how they're going about putting these things together?
It's hard for me to critique Coco because all I have to go off is a trailer. And the trailer doesn't necessarily mean that's the way this movie's going to be about. You know, some complaints I have with the trailer right off the bat is the music choice. You know, he goes to strum the guitar and we get something modern. But it looks very Disney. It looks like a Pixar movie to me. And when you talk to me about Book of Life, it screams Mexican American. It's very obvious the influence, the style of art, the choices, the banter, the characters. There's just so much in there. There's so much tiny little nuanced things that tells me this is a true Mexican tale. And it's just not Manolo. That's funny to say that because Joaquin's a major character. And now I feel really horrible. I cannot remember the young lady's name. Is it Maria? I'm trying to remember if the mom's Maria or the girl's Maria.
No, the girl. I believe the girl is Maria.
And another great thing about that movie is she's a powerful woman in that movie as well. She's a powerful young girl, and she becomes a powerful woman. So that story is beautiful. It's told very simple, like to me what the holiday is. You know, it originated as something cleaning the graves, taking care of the graves, leaving a small offering. You know, it's gotten big. It's gotten big. You know, now we're putting all kinds of stuff on there and things. But it's just a beautiful movie. And I watched Book of Life the other day with my daughter to prep for this. And she was parroting so many of the lines, just sitting there. And she watches the movies with her phone too. So sometimes I wonder if she's paying attention because she's tweeting and doing stuff. But she was parroting all these lines and doing some of the Spanglish and everything. They were just connecting with her. And she was just laughing to herself. So there's a heart in that film that I worry that Disney, in their goal to kind of make this a movie for everybody, they're going to wash it down. They're going to sanitize it and take a lot of that out.
No, I am right on par with you. And then considering what I feel culturally, what I see in everyday life along with this is really has me kind of chapped. Now, you know, we need to touch on something. The Book of Life, as much as we love it, it did have a few Anglo characters in them.
Yes.
And let's talk about, you know, Channing Tatum and Ron Perlman. How do you feel
Applegate
and Christina Applegate as you know, the teacher / she was, you know, narrating
the tour guide.
story. She was the tour guide. How do you feel about the fact that even in this story, there weren't Hispanic actors cast in these roles?
Not in all the roles. There was a few of the roles that weren't, and there were a few that were.
Right.
You know, obviously, the two main male characters were Latinos.
Right.
We had what's his name from Star Wars? Why can't I remember his name right now? Who played Cassian in Rogue One? He played
Diego
Manolo. Yep, he was
Diego Luna.
And Zoe Saldana, I believe, is Maria, and there's other ones. There's a lot of great Latinos. So, but there was, you know, Channing Tatum was a major character, and Ron Perlman played the villain, pretty much.
And Ice Cube was also in it.
That's right, also. But they were very good in it, and that gets to my point sometimes where we get a little crazy with this casting.
Right.
It's very hard to cast. You know, if someone is perfect for the role, someone is perfect for the role.
Right.
Because in the end, it's the final product. And Book of Life, being something smaller by this small little studio, allowed them to just do it. And there was no backlash and nobody came after them. And we have this great film with a great performance by Ron Perlman, especially. I think he's great in it. And Ice Cube is actually pretty darn good. would that can Coco do that? No, Coco can't do that because Coco is Disney and Coco is bigger. And if they were to cast in the major role Channing Tatum, the internet would lose its mind,
right?
And they wouldn't allow it to happen. So you do have to be fair in that sense, and not really go after Disney for that side of things. Because like you said, Book of Life did some things like that, but it's Latinos in the creative end. And because it's them in the creative end, you have somebody in charge letting Channing Tatum know, letting Ron Perlman know, letting Ice Cube know, this is the story we're telling. This is the perspective we'd like told.
Right.
And good actors can go off that and give you the story that we want told.
Yeah, that was the problem here originally. And they've learned, I give Disney this. They've learned from some of the mistakes they created when they first started this project. Way back when it first started, every person associated with this film from the top on down in the pre-production portion of it was all Anglo. And of course, Mexican Americans and certain organizations heard this, and they were very angry and very upset. And again, in today's world, they let him know. And they made some changes. They brought in someone to help co-direct along with the Pixar director, Lee Unkrich. But even with its all Latin cast, your development team is still going to be mostly Anglo here. Yeah. Whereas I believe we had the opposite in the Book of Life. One of the other things I wanted to quickly mention here was that after that backlash with from top to bottom kind of whitewashing, so to speak, I hate that word. I'm sorry to even be using it, that Disney had to go and actually create a cultural council of Mexican Americans, mostly made up of all the people who were complaining, all the people who were upset. So they kind of learned their lesson in that fashion. But I guess where I'm kind of trying to lead with all this stuff is, how do you feel about this culture? I mean, we haven't really gotten into to nipping this thing in the bud. It's not just Coco. And again, it's not the fact that, for me, and I want to make this clear, that it needs to be all Latin. What I want is something heartfelt and meant for my community, a good representation of my culture, all that stuff. And could it still be those things? Sure, it's Disney. They're good at bringing these things to the screen. But what we're talking about here is a holiday that's sacred and holy to some Mexican Americans. We're not talking about appropriating a Samoan or Polynesian culture like Moana. We're not talking about an Irish, these aren't holidays. These are just, you know what I mean? They're just races that they're inviting in, and they're including, which again is a good thing. They're including within their dynamic. But why this, the holiday? Why this? Why couldn't they come up with their own story?
Yeah, because they're lazy. Like I told you, I feel like they went down a list and they said, okay, what culture have we not done a movie on? We need to check the box. And glaring right there is Latino. We haven't done anything with Latinos, and we need to do something. So what should we do? And someone said, hey, Dia de los Muertos, we can do like animated skeletons and all the colors and all these neat things. We can do so much cool stuff, and we can mix in some music. It'd be awesome. Let's do it. And not really understanding what it is when they made these choices. Now, these are not dumb people. I'm sure they did research. The problem is just doing research isn't going to get you to an emotional place with something like you said that is so emotional to most Latino families and people grow up. So you can miss the boat. And to be fair, we talked about this. I'm not as outraged as you because I didn't grow up with this holiday. And we kind of talked about it. I'm from New Mexico, and I was kind of curious, like thinking about it. I never really knew a lot of this holiday growing up. And why is that? My grandmother was extremely devout Catholic. Into her 80s, she was singing in the Catholic, choir. Mm-hmm. But as I talked to my mom and different things, I go, it just wasn't something that was part of New Mexico culture.
Right.
It was more European based up there. We didn't have as much of the influence of the indigenous people that you have in, say, Arizona or borderland Texas or California. Right. So it wasn't part of. So I guess I don't come from as emotional of a point that you do, but I am still very concerned because it is a religious holiday.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not Mexican Halloween. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not the day that Mexicans dress up to go for candy.
Yeah. And see, and this is my biggest fear. This is all part and parcel, and it leads to everything else. And not to like dismiss these movies, but you know, Cinco de Mayo is a party day, and now all of a sudden Halloween has become the next traditional party day, and we're gonna slide Dia de los Muertos right in that. You know, here's how I grew up with it. I grew up with it as a very young child. We would drive down. I lived at the time Edwards Air Force Base, California. We'd drive down to LA. It's about a 2-hour drive. We'd spend Halloween with my grandparents, and we would go out and do the typical trick-or-treating and all that stuff, and we would come back. And then that Sunday was usually when they would celebrate Dia de los Muertos. We'd go to church. We would take pan dulce. We would light candles. There would be, depending on the uncle, he might have gotten a little shot of tequila next to his photo. But we honored our dead in a very holy way because it was done at church. Sometimes it's done at the cemeteries themselves, but there wasn't anything close by where all our family was. So we would bring photos and we would celebrate along with them, and we would say prayers, and we would do all these things. And that's how I grew up. And when I moved, you know, when we all moved here to Arizona, I've taken that with me. Dia de los Muertos here in Tucson, Arizona, where you and I are from, started off as a very small parade in our downtown area on 4th Avenue on a Sunday, the first Sunday in November. And you and I were joking about this. I was going through old videos of one of the last ones I went to, and it gets crashed now by people drinking and partying, and there were Krishnas. Not that they should all be included, but we've taken what I thought was a very simple holiday, and you've put these party people mixed with people who have lost their children, a way for them to mourn, people who've lost their parents or loved ones, a way for them to mourn. And that's what this was. A time to walk, remember, reflect, and bring them back to us and keep them in our community. That, my friend, is why I have this bitterness towards what's happening in our culture right now.
It's huge now. Just our parade here is just our procession. Technically, it's not a parade. It's funny that it's called a parade now. And the streets are lined with people watching it. At the end, it's a big celebration, which it's meant to be a celebration, but there's a combo, and you can't, I don't get angry about it because a lot of the people that are bringing the celebration, yes, there's the drunkards. I'm not talking about them, but there's a lot of kids. There's a lot of high school to college age kids that love to attend this event, and they're there to just celebrate and have fun. Right. But I feel they're doing it in a positive way. Like, you don't see kids getting wasted or creating problems or getting in fights. They're just there to celebrate the event. But you're right. They don't quite comprehend that maybe the person 3 people down are in the midst of a serious mourning. Maybe they lost a child last year. Maybe they lost their mom last year. And people are taking pictures, you know, because it's a very big event. My daughter was a photographer, and she would take pictures of different, mostly her sister, because she understood you can't just take pictures of anybody who's walking up and down on this thing, because it's a very personal moment. And the last thing they want is you taking a picture of them while they're in this moment, remembering, like I said, maybe their grandmother, their father, their brother that died, maybe overseas in the military. I mean, there is a lot of things that may be very raw and very fresh to the people that are in the procession that year.
Yep. And I will give you an example. I plan on walking this year. This year it was kind of a planned thing. I plan on walking in honor of my mother, who passed away just after 9/11. So, you know, and I hope people listening out there who aren't Mexican American, or who may not feel the same way that I do, understand that I'm just one of probably many people who feel this way. So when somebody's angry and upset and bitter about it, if I'm upset because when I go shopping for just the basic Halloween stuff and I see a sexy Dia de los Muertos skirt and outfit for a female up there, then I'm outraged by it. That they understand that when I see a movie that's coming out from Disney done, you know, and what they did to try to acquire all that story and stuff, it makes me bitter, and it does make me angry. It does make me upset, and and I'm very disappointed. And that's why this is a very hard thing to talk about. You and I have been struggling with this show. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, and I'm going to play the other side a little bit because it's been going this way way before Disney. This isn't something Disney made happen. Right. Disney just is going to be an extreme accelerant to this fire.
Yep.
Even going back before it became in America, I mean, Dia de los Muertos has become something. You go down to Mexico, tourists go down for that day. The vendors are selling trinkets. They've made little calavera sugar skulls to sell. They've made little mariachi calaveras. They've made all kinds of calaveras, the skeleton.
Right.
So they've made all these things, and so it's been merchandised for a while. It's just now it's hit turbo drive,
right?
And it's getting, and Christmas and Easter have gone through this. That's the other thing. Those are two holidays that are religious holidays that have gone through this. It's just been so long. In our lifetime, it's always been commercialized, I'm sure, and I'm almost 50, and that's what Dia de los Muertos is becoming. And to be fair, I don't think was going to be, even if Disney never made this movie, it was going that way anyway,
I will agree with you there. I guess that Disney decided to do this. And the reason is, and I want to mention this before I forget too, Disney did something that I was totally fine with. And they could have stopped there or come up with an original story. And that was its first Mexican-American or Hispanic princess. Her name is Elena of Avalor. And they put her out in cartoon form. And I was like, you know what? Good. That is how you bring young women, to realize that this is a princess now. She's going to be part of our family. And I thought that was a great thing. And that would have been enough for me. But you're right. No, you're absolutely right. This has definitely been going on for a long time. I don't blame Disney for all of it. But and Dia de los Muertos is part of our film culture too. You and I were discussing this. I can give you a list of movies that have either scenes shot within them or have them involved in Dia de los Muertos as part of the storyline, as in the first movie I'm going to talk about, Crow, City of Angels. Not a great movie, but I do love the idea behind the crow itself. But in the second film, and I sent you this footage a little earlier, he wanders into a church during the night of Halloween, you know what I mean? During Halloween, and he sees, a nana lighting a candle with food and everything. There's photos in the church. That's what I used to do. And so that to me, and the idea that the crow is dead and he's there and she recognizes him right away that something's not right. He shouldn't be there. And that's an important part of that film. It was used in the movie Assassins. Dia de los Muertos was in there. Dia de los Muertos was used in the opening scene to Spectre, the James Bond movie, last James Bond movie we had. And also, I can't forget about it, Once Upon a Time in Mexico had its finale during Dia de los Muertos. So what do you think of them using it in film in general? What are your thoughts on that, Andrew?
You forgot one of the more recent ones in BVS. Superman goes to South America somewhere and hits Dia de los Muertos. The people are dressed up with the skulls. I think part of it is it's just very visually stunning.
Yep.
With the Crow one, yes, it's incorporated into the story. So that one's a little different. Yep. But with the other ones, it's just a visually stunning. And the way I kind of described it to you, it's like in all these movies where you have these scenes that happen during a Chinese New Year type parade. With the firecrackers and the dragon and all that stuff and them being very similar. They're looking for something stunning to add some more incredible visuals to excite the scene. And that doesn't bother me so much because it's just a scene and it's a parade. They're not showing them at the graveyard.
Right.
They're not showing them in the church. So that's a different thing. Now with the Crow, it's funny you say that because where my culture thing is, I'm going to come up with these comics. Here's a print of a comic I read, and it's called La Muerte. And La Muerte, the creator of La Muerte, lives in Phoenix now. He's the head of Coffin Comics. And he said that he was inspired to write that by the procession here in Tucson. And
Right.
it's basically a Crow type story. You have a Latin American woman who was a soldier in Afghanistan. She comes home to her family, ends up getting gunned down by the cartel. The Lady of Death comes to her, gives her a chance to get redemption and revenge. Very Crow-like, but
Right.
in a very Latin American way. The way I describe it is if Robert Rodriguez did a Crow, that's that.
This would be it. I see a film opportunity right there. Those two,
Yeah.
we need to get those two together as soon as possible because that sounds amazing.
But really quickly, is that bad? Is that good? I don't know, you know?
Well, that leads into my next question. That it definitely does. And that goes to, you know, can Coco, will Coco, or any of these things, the comics, all that stuff, is it harmful to what we see as our culture? And a good friend of ours of the show brought something up, and I want to read it to you. He's a nice guy. I've been on podcasts with him with the Movie Bears. His name is Mike Lovins, and when I post, I put out a pretty angry tweet, and he commented back. It was about just after the Coco trailer came out, and he replied, "Could it be looked at as trying to include other cultures in their storytelling, or is there something that stands out as a money grab?" That was his question. So do you think, Andrew, that these things are going to be harmful in the long run, or is it a matter of how they do them? What are your thoughts?
It's a matter of how the story, because we haven't seen it. They
Right.
may do this beautifully. And he's right, the fact about sharing culture, because there's some ignorance about this holiday that isn't necessarily everyone's fault. Like I said, people think it's Mexican Halloween. And there's parts of the country where there's not a lot of Latinos, or the ones that are there may be Puerto Riqueño,
Right.
Dominican, Cuban. It may not have the Dia de los Muertos celebration. So some people just don't know. And can this story possibly share some culture and educate at the same time, or spark people to look a little more into it? So yes, there could be some positives, definitely, but it all depends on how it's done, like you said. And in the end, there is still a money grab, and the movie is one thing too, and I like to separate that. The other part of Disney, which is
Right.
the same part of Marvel and WB and everything else, they are trying to sell merchandise. Let's don't lie. They're selling toys, and they're selling shirts, and they're selling lunchbox and backpacks and everything. And it's coming. It's gonna come.
It's already here. The Coco
You know.
stuff is at the Disney store in our local factory outlet mall. The shirts are already there. So
do you think a positive can come out of it, or are you just so like irritated with it?
And this is where it's tough for me, because we have really good friends that I care about, and I've already mentioned them, and that's Brad and Jim over at the Movie Bears podcast, and especially Brad and Jim. They are big time Disney fans, and I love Disney. I'm not going to lie, I love Disney. I love the fact that they even have the Star Wars universe. But this for me, I think opened my eyes even bigger. They were already kind of poking at me with a stick, and I think unfortunately when this trailer came out and I saw the general tone of this movie after what we had in the Book of Life, it woke the bear up. I got angry. I'm not gonna lie. I can laugh about it now, and I've calmed down. But yeah, I'm really upset that they've done it in this fashion, and what they did to try to appropriate the culture itself and trademarking that name. That's something. Can I forgive them for it in the future? Well, yeah, I'll be at Thor Ragnarok along with everybody else, and all that other stuff. But I don't know, Andrew. You and I have been knowing each other for a long time. What do you think? Do you think I could? What do you think of knowing me? Can I get over this?
I guess it's going to depend on how the movie comes out. But you're right. There's just certain things that are going to always be there. And like I said, I think it's irrelevant in the movie. Coco's not what's inspiring the sexy Dia de los Muertos costume. That's just a general sleaziness of Halloween now that's taken over.
Right.
You know what I mean? Somewhere along the line, I'm not anti-Halloween, but somewhere along the line, they yanked this from the little kids and they turned it into a drunk fest. Oh, yeah. And it's about excuse for a lot of girls to just pretty much wear lingerie and call it a costume. Fine. That's what you want to do. That's what you want to do. But again, when you start associating it with a religious holiday, someone's religion, then, it's disrespectful.
Yeah. That is definitely true. I wish I could just spout out all my, I don't want to spout out all my feelings, because a lot of them are angry, and I see it going that way. And, we've each had children growing up through all of this. We took them out for Halloween, and, I remember opening the door back when I was married, and standing in front of me are 6 teenage girls dressed in the skimpiest stuff you could possibly think of. And now we're kind of lending into this, I don't know. It's appropriating this side of my culture, and I feel like that line has been crossed. I don't know that I can let this go anytime soon.
So will you see the movie?
I will see the movie, so that way I don't want to be one of those people who complains about something and in the end just doesn't see it. I did that for one thing and one thing only because I knew way too much. And that was the Fantastic Four movie. I didn't care what anybody said. I didn't care about the people who said they liked it. I didn't care about the people who said they did. I just knew it was going to be crap and I was going to hate it. And I had, whether you call it preconceived notions and all that stuff. And I never went to see it. I never will see it. I don't want to see it. And I just won't. Coco's different. This is my heritage and culture. And if I'm going to talk about it and I'm going to be angry about it, I'm going to come on this podcast and put together a show with you that's taken 2 weeks. We've done this for 2 weeks because we wanted to get it right for all of you. If you're listening, we wanted to really get this right and touch the right key things and say the right words. And yeah, I'm going to go watch it and I will give it its due. If it turns me around, I'll be the first person to say so. If it continues to put me down that path of being bitter and jaded towards this culture appropriation, then yeah, I'll say that too. What about you?
Yeah, I'll probably see it. Like I said, I was in the middle anyway. I don't know if I was going to see it even without this, because I don't really go to it. Now my daughter's gotten a bit older where the animated movies aren't quite her thing. My youngest, I mean, but I thought about that when you were saying that. What about people that do take their young kids, and what if it sparks a wonderful discussion and parents start having a discussion about remembering grandma and grandpa or relatives that have passed? And again, that could be another positive that comes out of this. That's not just a one culture thing, because that's another thing that when I talk about Dia de los Muertos, I'm talking about a specific kind of version of it. Right. That is in the Southwest of Mexico. There are other holidays very similar. Every indigenous race has some sort of holiday that celebrates the dead. And they may be at different times. They may be celebrated a little different. And so it's something that's very culturally, it's a global idea. So that could be a positive that comes out of it. So yes, I'll probably see it.
Yeah, there I agree with you. I know that this is going to be a positive for somebody. Do you know what I mean? I just don't know that if I can come to terms with the fact that the way they've gone about trying to do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, they were shady.
They were shady about it, and they did some things I wasn't sure. And a good example, like what you just brought up, yes, other cultures and other religions have their way of honoring the dead. We talked about, there's a quick glimpse of it in Mulan, right? Mm-hmm. And then you haven't seen Kubo yet, but there's a hint of that in there, and I'm not going to get into it because I still want you to see it. It's a great.
I'll go watch it too.
You got to go watch that. It's Kubo, so there's a hint of it touches on how they do it or how it's done in this film, and I guess like I said, and trying to wrap this all up, man. I want my culture to be shown in a positive light. Will Disney do a good job of that? I'm pretty sure they will. Okay. But it's what they do behind the scenes to get to that point that's got me agitated and irritated. And unfortunately, that is all bolstered by our culture. By me walking into a store and I walk into Michael's, I look in Michael's and they got skulls you can paint and they're not skulls for Halloween. They got little flowers etched in them and around their eyes. They're meant for you to paint those. They've now become art processes. And I mean, if you take those and you use them in a ceremony, hey, great, all more power to you. But now they're putting this stuff out alongside Halloween. Mm-hmm. They're putting it alongside out. If they had a shelf that said, to honor your loved ones, Dia de los Muertos, boom, right there, I might feel a little bit better about it. No one's even thinking about the positivity that you could market this in a proper fashion, but you don't see it.
Maybe they will. We don't know yet. Maybe they will. Now, yeah, it's hard to have a lot of faith in a company that big because
exactly
they're going to dump it all over Walmart and it's going to be everywhere, you know?
Oh yeah. And then I don't even know what restaurant has the Happy Meal rights to Coco.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? I'm not
right.
looking forward to hearing that. And that's the kind
You're
of
exactly right. Some fast food's going to have little trinkets and things.
Tim, that's what I'm talking about, man. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about.
And
But
it's
if it sparks a conversation, I'm happy about it. You know? Yeah.
From an artistic point of view, you know, like you said with the Michaels, I get that because the images are so beautiful and they've inspired so many great art. I showed you that print.
Yeah.
That's what first got me over to that booth at one of the Comic Cons.
Yep.
You know, I didn't know about that comic, and I went over and then I learned about that he was, you know, in this area he lived now, and found out that he wrote some other things I knew. But it was that image of you know, the Mexican warrior kind of with the calavera, the mask.
Right.
And I was like, oh, that's really cool. So it's a very inspiring artistic choice to draw things that are Dia de los Muertos or paint things or create things. So I get how an artist would be drawn to something like that. So
I do too.
Michaels has stuff. So
I do too, clearly. So, you know, this is just one of those topics that, you know, I call it, these are one of those things, and I like to toss this word around. It's the Kobayashi Maru, my friend. And by that, I mean, it's a no-win situation. To me, it is. And by that, I mean simply that, you know, will my culture be recognized for it? Yes. But by what means? So there's a good and bad to both sides. And, you know, we just hope that you guys have all enjoyed us and this discussion. And hopefully we shed a little light on this for you.
Well, that's how I look at it. It's obvious that Felipe is very passionate about this and it's touched the core, but take it as a opportunity to learn a little bit about it. And I hope everyone walks away realizing there's more to this holiday. And when you see it happening and going around, you remember, like, this is a little more than just Halloween. This is something that is pretty cool looking, and it's a pretty great idea that, you know, people honor their ancestors in a positive way, in a happy way versus a sad way. You know, it's therapeutic. And, you know, and then just look at it as a happy thing. Don't like take all our anger into it.
No.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. And then back to Mike Lovins there. He did come back to me after I described some of the things that are in my culture and stuff like that during my little Twitter rant. He did come back and say, I appreciate it. You know, he said that he was very oblivious as to what it meant to me. And he was kind enough to just ask and take that information. So, you know, whether we do it or Coco does it or Book of Life does it for you, I hope that you take something from this, that you understand, just like you said. I think you hit the nail on the head. Just like you said, that you understand that when you see it, as beautiful as it is, understand what it might mean to somebody. Understand that it's not just somebody who's dressed like a skeleton who may have a beer in his hand. It's a little bit more than that. It's a little bit more than that. When I paint my face this November and I walk down that street with a picture of my mom in my hands, it's going to mean something to me, man. And I want it to mean something to my children, to my daughter who's going to be there. And I don't want to get carried away because I could get misty-eyed, because I tend to be a little sappy, and we don't want that on the damn show here. So, but anyway, in closing, do you have any final thoughts or anything you'd like to say to anybody listening, or like to say about Dia de los Muertos itself?
No, just for everyone to keep an open mind. And again, this isn't necessarily a slam on a film. I haven't seen it. It's more a slam on the way Disney's handled the whole process.
I agree. It's about the process of getting to where they've come to making this film in the middle of the Book of Life coming out, no less. You know what I mean? So that's what kind of has me jiggered. But see the film.
See the Book of Life.
Yeah. If you haven't seen the Book of Life, I recommend it if you truly want to understand my heritage and culture, along with a little bit of good music, and see what the myth of Dia de los Muertos and the legend told by this one person. And there are many. You said it earlier. There are many different versions. Everybody celebrates it differently, but see for yourself, understand, and learn. Educate yourself, I guess, is the best way to put it. So, Andrew, what do you say we wrap this puppy up?
I say we say adios.
That's right. Adios. Vaya con Dios. Thank you all for listening. If you've listened Please give us a comment. Tell us what you think. Has Disney gone too far? Have I gone too far? Do you agree with us? Do you not agree with us? Give us your opinion. We'll always take it. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Real Comics Podcast. Andrew, where can they find you on the Twitter sphere?
They can find me at Real Comics, REELCOMICS.
And if you're looking for me, Felipe, you can find me at Voodoo57 at your Twitter. We're going to try to use our real names. I think I threw out a Speedy G there earlier. Sorry about that, buddy. We're going to try to
handle.
There you go. That's our gamer tags. And we're going to try to start using those a bit more. Open ourselves up to everybody. So please make sure you join us again for our next show. And as always, be your own hero.